fabulous morning. I'm enjoying this so much. I've seen some amazing people, it's wonderful. So we've got Jazz here and we've got Laura here, and they're going to introduce themselves. But they are known and loved by BABTAC because we use you guys as well, both of you don't we? So they come well recommended by BABTAC. So over to you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Laura, really nice to meet you all, and it's been lovely to chat to lots of you today already. I'm the co-founder of We Grow Startup, so we're a marketing agency for fast-growing businesses. We work across lots of different industries, as we said, like BABTAC, also work with Jasmine, skincare brand Face, another record pub, but then yes, across other sectors as well. Our big thing is all around helping businesses to grow online, so whether that's selling products online or driving bookings, or lead generation, for example, all that sort of performance digital marketing. When I'm not doing that, I'm also a yoga teacher, and I really like surfing as well. It's like my big passion, so if you like that, we'll have good chats.
Yeah, I don't have any hobbies, I'm a newborn baby, so
yeah, that's right.
so I'm Jasmine, lovely to see you all. I've worked in communications for the last 15 years, specifically within the beauty industry. So I set up my agency Known 5 years ago, and then also 2 years ago I launched a skincare brand called Face. So we stocked in about, I don't know, 100 doors, multiple different countries like Liberty, stores like Liberty, Harrods, Boots, look fantastic. So I've been able to sort of learn from the communication side of everything, but then also learn about it firsthand, being sort of a brand owner as well. So what we wanted to cover for today is hopefully give you a bit of an insight into sort of PR and social and digital, and think about whether it might be the right time for your business, but also potentially give you some handy tools so that you can go away and actually implement some strategies for yourself as well. So I am going to just touch on really briefly why you might consider PR. So it's a low-cost option versus traditional advertising. You can do some PR yourself, and like I said, we're going to touch on that a little bit in this session. It allows you to reach relevant audiences by targeting specific titles, and it can help you build brand awareness for your businesses as well. So, where to start? What I wanted to do in this session is take you through the difference between an email pitch and a press release, because if you are going to go out there and implement some PR strategies for yourself, they're two really handy things that you can go away. You know, you guys all know your businesses far better than any team that you can bring on board. So hopefully this will give you some pointers to allow you to be able to do that yourself. So, key things to consider when you're doing your pitch. So I'll talk about your email pitch first, and then we can talk about your press release as the next step. So, and I've gone information overload in this deck because I wanted to be able to share it with you afterwards so that you can actually take it away and utilise it. So if I go too fast or you think there's a lot to cover, don't worry, you will get a copy of the presentation after today. So when you're thinking about your press pitch, you want it to be ultimately really, really short and snappy. So thinking about things like your subject, your headline, making sure it's really compelling, thinking about your opening paragraph, being straight to the point, ending with a call to action, like what do you actually want to get out of this email conversation that you're having with press, and then you use your document attachment, aka your press release, for the further information. So I'll include sort of further information about this as the next step. So, how would you format your pitch? I've used the opportunity to talk about like a new day spa in Brighton, that's where I live, as this example, but this is like a framework that you could apply to any business if you were going to email a journalist. So your subject, appointment at a new luxury day spa, so straight away you're getting to the crux of the matter. This is why I'm emailing you, I wanted to find out if that would be something of interest to you. Your opening para, so this needs to be like straight to the point. This is what we're all about, this is who we are. So for example, we're a brand new space, opening in Brighton, giving consumers a more premium day spa experience. Why are you emailing needs to come next. So we saw, for example, in your local publication, whatever that may be, that you'd written about space in the past, and actually we thought what we were doing could be perfect for you. Then I would always recommend including like a lovely, beautiful image within that kind of email pitch. Journalists are getting hundreds and hundreds of emails every single day, and it's highly likely that yours is going to grab their attention the more visual you can make it. And then just ending with something like, please find attached a full press release and do let me know at the time that might suit you to attend. Best wishes, Jasmine. So that might seem really, really brief, and I think it can be really tempting when you're emailing press to want to share all of that info. But like I said, you know, they could be getting 600 pictures a day across different businesses, different brands, different spaces, and so in my experience, it's much better to keep that pitch straight to the point, and then if someone's going to take the time to want to speak to you, to find out more, to write more, then they're going to take the time to read your press release, which is what we'll go on to talk about next. So, yeah, I've kind of touched on this already, but why keep it brief? Journalists receive hundreds of pictures every day, and they won't be able to read more in any detail. They'll likely skim read the ones that they are thinking might be interesting for what they're writing there and then, or potentially if they have a regular slot, they might file it away for future. Like I said, your press release can give them all the nitty-gritty. And also you need to have your kind of like hat on of what's actually interesting for press within this pitch. You know, everybody thinks that their businesses are unique, everyone thinks that what they're doing is the best, and I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm sure what everyone here is doing is absolutely brilliant, but you are going to have competition out there. There are going to be kind of other businesses that are selling similar products or offering similar services, and ultimately, you know, this is your opportunity to just show in a really succinct way what you're all about. You know, so research your USP, stay ahead of the trends, and take time to consider like why actually would this be of interest to a journalist. And that ultimately comes down to you doing a bit of research in advance, which we'll go on to talk about in a second. So that's your pitch, but probably before you even start to think about your pitch, you're going to shape your press release. Now, similarly to your pitch, you want the upfront bit, the headline, the sub-headline to be super compelling, super interesting, and you want to get across to that journalist straight away, what are you offering? Again, it's really tempting to just throw the kitchen sink at these things because, you know, you're so passionate about what you do, and that's amazing, but you just need to be realistic that journalists are so time poor. You know, they're getting pitched to, like I've said, by hundreds of brands. They're not going to have the time to sort of, you know, take in that level of information. So with your press release, again, think about your title, make sure it's really, really compelling. Think about your subtitle, and that is like one simple sentence where you can summarise what it is that you think you're doing differently. Your opening paragraph should ultimately be like your elevator pitch. You've probably heard that before, but in that short paragraph, the journalist should be able to understand exactly what it is that you offer as a business. Then the following paragraphs, they're your opportunity to share the nitty-gritty. You know, if you've really worked on your interiors and you've worked with a great interior designer and you want to reference that, there's the time. If you want to include a founder quote to share the passion and the sort of personality from the brand, that's the time. You know, if you're massive in your sustainability principles, then that's the time to include it. But just try and keep that upfront bit and try and keep that email pitch super, super succinct, because that's just ultimately what's going to help you kind of create that opportunity and get the attention of press without them switching off. And then at the end, what's really important is making sure you include the practical info. So it might be that a journalist will receive your pitch, not reply, file it away for another day, and still include you at a later date when they're doing, I don't know, a roundup of the best salons up and down the country, for example. Especially if you've sent some great imagery with your pitch and you've included a press release with all of this detail in, there wouldn't necessarily be a reason for them to even come back to you. So it's really important at the end of this press release, you include the practical elements that you would want to see in any bit of coverage. So for example, if it's a link to your website, make sure you include that. It sounds really obvious, but you know, don't miss these things out within this format. If it's actually somewhere where people can download, you know, some expert advice that you're offering, or whatever it is, make sure you include that. It could be your address on the high street for where people to find you. Make sure you include that, and also contact details for further information. And then, if you can, think about what could be offered to press as an exclusive aspect. Now, this isn't a have to do. If there isn't anything, absolutely don't do it. But what I mean by that is, you know, you might have included, for example, in your press release, a lovely quote from your founder of your business or your brand or your CEO or whatever that shares the passion for that business, but actually the press might like to speak to that person at a later date. So offer that. If you've got beautiful imagery of your space, you might consider splicing up that imagery per publication, especially if you're doing regional outreach, where potentially the publication is a bit, you know, cash-strapped. They might be really interested in actually taking one of your images off you exclusively, and that might help you secure that piece. So just have a think when you are collating all of this info, when you're doing your press release, when you're doing your press pitch, think about the things that you've got, the assets that you've got that could potentially be offered up as an exclusive to each member of press.
Sorry, hi, I'm actually a journalist, I'm from Trade Beauty, and I was wondering if I could just add to that when you are sending all the practical info, if you're sending images via WeTransfer, like Jill said, sometimes we do just file stuff away and come back later, and it's really annoying if that WeTransfer runs out after a week and we need it in
Yeah.
2 weeks' time.
We always use a Dropbox links.
Yeah,
But it
so-
lasts forever.
Because that's time it takes us to come back, ask you to send it back over. We might be on deadline that week and you might not be able to resend it. So it's stuff like that that's going to make it easier for the journalist to share your work or make them more likely to want to.
Exactly, very good point. So whilst it's useful to think about what to include in your pitch, what to do in your press release, there are some big pitching no-nos that I also wanted to share. Every new client that we get, this is something that we try and explain. You know, a lot of agencies have different principles, but these are ones that we've always adhered to and I think work really well. Calling. So it's really tempting to want to call up a journalist and have a chat about your business. You're so passionate. You know, you have to understand, especially since the pandemic, journalists are so time poor. You could have somebody that's got to file magazine copy, multiple online articles, think about social media. So if they're head down in their copy work, the last thing they want to do is hear from you, frankly. So I would just always advise against calling. There are always exceptions to every rule. You know, if you've got a trip planned for Ibiza the next day and you've got 2 spots and you need to know if she's going to come or not, fair enough, give her a ring. But if it's not something that's actually urgent, just take the time to craft your pitch really well, and that's the best way, in my opinion, to reach out with the press. Emailing to follow up. Again, when you spend a long time crafting your press pitch or press release and you've really put your heart and soul in it, it can be really disheartening to then send it out to your journalists not to hear back from them, and there can be a real temptation to follow up. Now, my advice would be, rather than following up and saying, did you get this? Just a reminder about this. Think about something new and fresh and interesting about your brand or your business that you can follow up with. So, for example, if you saw a trend in the news that you think is perfectly placed for your founder to talk about, or if you're offering a new treatment within your space, by all means, forward that email that you sent, so there is that chain there, and technically you are following up, but do it in a way that's like, oh, actually, I saw this trend, or I have this new piece of information for you, and I thought it could be perfect for your piece because of this, so I'm just sending that on. Then that way, you're not going to get on their nerves, you're forever providing useful information to them. You know, and it might be realistically, if that journalist is on holiday, or it's been the kids' school holidays, or for whatever reason, he or she might just be really stacked. They could have just deleted their whole inbox and never have seen your pitch. So actually, following up, it doesn't have to be a negative, but just do it in a considered way so it always feels like you're giving them that fresh, interesting, new piece of information. You're not just kind of asking, did you get this, did you see this? Making the email too long, you know, I kind of touched on it already, but if the journalist has to keep scrolling to read your email, then your email is too long. So basically, just try and keep it really snappy. Like I said, work hard to finesse what your key USP is, what your key message is, and then use that press release format to share that further info. Being irrelevant. So again, you know, it is hard when people are moving around publications, but at the end of the day, we've got social media, we've got LinkedIn, we've got Instagram, we've got Google. You can stalk people online now to actually find out who the best person is for your pitch. So don't be irrelevant. You know, you get annoyed if someone rings you up and says, you know, were you in a car accident that wasn't your fault, because that's not actually relevant to your life. It's just the same, you know, you ringing up or contacting journalists saying, I've got this for you, and it's actually irrelevant to what they write about on a day-to-day basis. It's just annoying. It's a waste of time for you, it's a waste of time for them, so just don't do it. And I touched on exclusives. Only offer something exclusively if it actually is that. Again, there's nothing more annoying for a journalist to feel like they've got an exclusive. Perhaps they're a freelancer or they've got an editor. They take that piece of information to the powers that be, they get sign off on it, and then they see a competitor publication publish something that you've offered to them. That's just going to, you know, piss them off, and it's going to damage that relationship with you and them long term. So if you are going to take the leap to offer something exclusive, make sure you just do it in a really upfront way. Now you can set a timer to that. So for example, you could say, I'm going to hold this exclusively for you for 24 hours, and then I'm going to take that elsewhere. So there are ways of doing it, but just be mindful when you're offering exclusives. So you've written your press release and pitch, what do you do next? It's really important that you spend the time doing your pre-planning, because ultimately if you're just going out to the wrong people in the wrong way, you're just wasting everyone's time. So create a media list, and it's obvious, a media list is exactly that. It's a list of the titles you want to take your pitch and your press release to, it's the list of journalists, Readly is a really great app. It's really affordable, and I've actually only been using it sort of since the pandemic. Before that, we used to go to the newsagents. We used to buy every single publication, and the team and I, we'd go through it all. We'd look for the relevant pages for the brands that we were working with. Now you don't need to do that. You can download Readly, and you can skim read a number of publications and get a really good feel for those titles, who's writing in those titles. Google, again, it sounds really obvious, but don't pitch an online title without Googling what they're writing about first, because again, it's a waste of your time. If you think you're pitching this new innovative space or this treatment or whatever it might be, and they've just written about it, then unlikely to do another article on that again. So don't waste anyone's time, do your research first. Sign up to newsletters. You know, we're all really, really busy. A good way to get a really good feel for a publication is to sign up to their newsletter. It pops into your inbox. You can skim read it, and then just from doing that regularly, you'll start to get a feel for what that publication's about, the journalists at that publication, and what's likely to resonate with that publication if you think that that's a target title for you and your business. Choose a time of day. Yeah, so there isn't really a one best time of day to pitch. You know, it varies from publication and person to person, but I would recommend dedicating that time to do it. So, you know, I get a lot of feedback from people that are kind of full-time at a publication that Thursdays and Fridays aren't really a great time to reach out to them, and perhaps Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays are better. Other journalists that are freelance might actually say that they look at their emails more regularly on a Friday. So this one, there isn't really a best-in-class kind of set time that I can tell you to do. But what I would recommend is you setting that time to yourself to do it. Start on a Monday perhaps, set aside half a day every week to do it, and then if you're finding that that's not working great for you, maybe try a Wednesday. But I think realistically, you're not going to do it if you try and dip in and out of it. Set yourself some clear time to put towards your PR, and then you're more likely to see the results. Be consistent. You know, kind of like I've already said, like journalists are literally getting hundreds of pitches every day. Thousands of brands are pitching to them. So don't be disheartened if you send out your pitch once and you don't hear back from anyone. A lot of brands that decide they want to work with us as an agency give us that feedback. Oh, we've done a bit of PR before, it didn't really get us anywhere. And it's not that necessarily their story isn't really compelling. It's not that necessarily they're taking that story out to the wrong people even. It's just that maybe they're not being consistent enough. And you know, you just need to be a bit relentless with it. And be mindful of lead times, you know. Magazines could be working on a 3-month lead time. We're in May. That might mean that actually they're looking at September issues. So even if, in a best case scenario, which by the way is never going to happen, we pitch something today, it's not going to get featured in a monthly magazine for 3 months. And you know, that's only going to happen, like I said, that would be a fluke. So I think just be considered of magazine and publications lead times. There's always exceptions, but generally if you have in your mind that monthlies are working about 3 months in advance, weekly magazines about 6 weeks in advance, your national dailies could be a week, could be a day, and similarly with onlines it varies. You know, you might get some features that are being way, like pre-planned way in advance, or you might get some online articles that are being written the day before. But either way, just manage your own expectations. If you set yourself a goal of like, right, this is going to take me at least 3 months to see any results, and that can be whether you're working with an agency, whether you're working with a freelancer, whether you're doing it yourself. It's a really good, you know, like time frame to have in your mind, and you won't be too disappointed if things don't happen for you really quickly. So I just wanted to touch on sort of doing your own PR versus working with a freelancer or an agency. Because again, I think, you know, there are ultimately definitely some things that you can do yourself, and I think you just got to go for it, be bold, like take your brand out there, be considered, but ultimately have a go. If you've got no budget for an agency, give it a crack yourself. However, it might be useful also if you are thinking that you might be at that stage to bring on board an agency. This is how I would summarise ultimately the differences between, you know, doing it yourself and bringing on someone to help. Relationshiip. So someone that's been in the industry for years and years and years, or is working at an agency that is used to kind of emailing journalists for a long period of time, those emails from those people are going to be more likely to be opened. It's as simple as that. Now, you know, long gone are the ab-fab days where we just go out and get journalists pissed and that's how we get coverage. Like, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that anymore. The best thing you can do is write a good press release and write a good press pitch and be relevant. That's the best thing you can do. But relationships do enter into it to a certain extent. You know, if I email someone that's used to seeing my name, Jasmine Wicks for 15 years, I'd like to think they'd be more likely to open it than if some random emailed them. You know, that's just a given, we'd all be the same. Strategy. So again, you know, I talked about this idea of being relentless and keeping going and being proactive, and that's where like a freelancer or an agency team or person can support you. They can, you know, support you in creating those stories time and time again. You can absolutely kind of give them all of the info about your business, about your brand, about everything that you're doing regularly, but they can just help you kind of keep those angles fresh and new. They can keep their finger on the pulse for you and help you kind of keep, you might have one space, you might have one treatment menu that's never going to change. How do you keep that fresh and new? Well, that's where, you know, a team can help. And activities as well, you know, PR is more than just your press office function. It can actually be affiliate marketing, it can be press mailers, it can be events, it can be influencer support. So if you think that you want to kind of, I guess, upweight your marketing tactics, then that could be the opportunity at the time for you to think about bringing on someone to help you with that. So I'm just aware of time, so I'm going to flick through sort of social media basics and then hand over to Laura quickly. But you know, there are three key considerations that I wanted to share with you guys for doing your social media well. First of all, does your page reflect your brand? I'm sure you all are very well considered in how your premises look, how your brands look. So just make sure that you're taking the same care and attention over your social media. It's really easy to just go onto a stock image website and whack out any old image because you want to talk about summer skin. Don't do that. You don't like looking at that, so don't post that. You know, it's better to post less frequently, but do it really, really well. Are you using all the channels that you should be? There are so many channels digitally now that you can use to promote your business. So I won't go through them now because, like I said, I'm going to share this deck, but this is how I would summarise each of the channels and how they can benefit your business. So think about, am I using the right ones to best promote what I do? And lastly, does your page actually help you achieve your goal? So if your goal is to get more bookings, then make sure your Instagram page has a link for people to make a booking. It sounds really obvious, but make sure your social media channels are actually supporting you in achieving the end goals. If it's to download information about your courses, make sure there's some sort of download link there. There's so many like easy to use apps and sites that are really cheap, if not free, for you to do that. So just go away and have a look at all your channels and make sure that they are actually delivering on your goals, because ultimately they're there for your businesses, so think about them in that way. Quality content is key, yeah. Again, I just sort of touched on it, but quality content is really, really key. Think about what you're putting out there. Don't just put stock imagery. Don't use rubbish templates. You know, you can invest in a freelance graphic designer really inexpensively, and he or she could create some templates for you that you could then go away and repopulate in Canva yourself. You could invest in a photographer to come and shoot your space for half a day, which might seem like a big cost, but actually you can get so much out of those assets. If you are going to do PR, 100% you need them. If you are thinking about updating your website, they're going to make your website look better. You can use them on your social media channels. They're going to be the resolution that you need for press. Like, if I had £1 for every single new client that I brought on board that sent me images, sent me a headshot of themselves, or sent me an image of their space that wasn't actually suitable for press, I'd be loaded. Like, nobody ever gets it right, so don't underestimate how important having quality imagery that is the right size, you know, like Lolly said, is sent in the right way, how important that is if you are actually serious about achieving results for your businesses. Planning ahead whilst being reactive. So I just wanted to touch on this, you know, like the best social media accounts adapt. They are planned in advance, so like I said, you consider your imagery, you consider your graphics, you consider everything and make sure it's a really good shop window for your business. But also be reactive. You know, people go to social media because they want to engage with other people. So if it's been the Oscars or if there was something on Netflix, make sure that you're also bringing back the relevance to what you do, to what's happening culturally, and that's just going to give you a better chance to connect with your consumer. If your consumer feels like you're constantly just selling at them, whilst that's an important piece of what you do, if that's only what you do, I mean, you can talk about, I'm sure you can consider it from your own personal experiences of how you engage with social. It can just switch you off. So just be mindful of that. And don't get obsessed with growth. You know, every new client that we bring on board to manage their social media account is obsessed with growth. But I just want to tell you all now, and again, it might be really obvious, anyone that's grown significantly via social is investing thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. I can't stress how many thousands enough, like hundreds of thousands literally. So don't be obsessed with growth, just be obsessed with you doing a really, really good job, making sure that your account reflects your ethos, is actually useful. People, like I said, there's some sort of call to action for them. You know, it reflects your business, but don't be obsessed with necessarily generating the numbers. And what I've included here is like basically some top tips of things that you can do to support that growth. So you guys can have a read of those later, and hopefully some of them will be easy for you to implement within your strategies. And then lastly, just to touch on working with influencers really briefly, you know, I don't know whether you do it already, but working with micro-influencers, especially within local communities, can be a really great way for you to, you know, promote your business. But just be prepared to pay. Their time should be valued as much as your time should be valued. So I think you just need to be really, really mindful in your approach. And again, if you Google like best ways to approach influencers, there'll be loads of top tips online. But again, just be mindful in the way that you do it. You know, you don't want to, as a business, come across like you don't value people's time. So the worst thing you can do is email and just be like, you know, can you do this for me? It needs to be a conversation. It needs to be a mutually beneficial collaboration. And then that way you're going to get the best results out of it. And I'd love to talk to you about it more, but I'm running out of time, so I'm going to shut up now and hand over to Laura.
I have learned so much. Yeah. I'm hearing Jazz talk about that now, and I'm like, I guess so much about PR. So, yeah, we've talked about some, I guess, well, things you can start to do yourself there. But I think there comes a point in, like, when working with every business where you're like, I think I want to take this to the next level, and you know, I feel like I've reached the limits of word of mouth or like the organic reach that I'm getting, and this might be the time when you start to think about paid advertising and putting, you know, cash behind advertising on social media or things like that. So when is the right time? So we talk about in my agency that if you're like a direct-to-consumer business, that once you hit 1,000 customers, so I'm selling a product online, that's like a good benchmark. But if you are more like you're a salon, and once you've had, I would say, I don't know, 500 clients, like that sort of thing, that's more perhaps the right sort of time to look at that. Equally, if you think about it from a media budget point of view, you have maybe £5,000 to £10,000 a month to be thinking about your total marketing spend. Like again, that's the sort of level where you want to be putting budget into advertising. Putting £50, like boost a post on Instagram, feels very accessible, but I really have to say, I think that's Instagram kind of taking your money and probably you're not getting a lot from it. It feels really like harmless, but you could do it all the time. It's like gambling, really, right? And who knows who you're talking to. So getting into the crux of paid advertising and using the ad platforms in like the sort of best way they're intended allows you to be more specific about who you reach. It allows you to really understand the impact of what's happening with your advertising as well. So we're going to talk a bit more about now. So as I've touched on really briefly, there's two main types of advertising, simplifying things down. There's search, so like Google, Bing, others, like we can list them, mainly it's Google, right? And then we've got lots of different social media platforms. And we're going to talk about both of these, but we're going to start with social, we can then have it at number two. So where do you start? Because it can be a bit daunting, like where should I invest budget first? So I think a good idea is to start with the platform where you have the most organic social engagement already. You know, if you have lots of followers or lots of comments and shares and things on Instagram, like great, let's start with advertising there. Have a look at what is getting engagement already from your followers. So, you know, is it that witty video? Is it a really lovely product demo video that you have? Like what gets engagement? And let's look at that first. Then we have, make sure it follows creating best practice, and I'll talk a little bit more about my definition of what that would be. And then the most important thing, I think, when it comes to paid advertising is to think about what goal you want to achieve. So being really specific about, well, do I want to drive website visitors? Do I want to drive bookings? Do I want to drive sales? Do I want to drive leads? Know what it is, and then make sure that your setup is done in such a way that you will actually be able to measure that. So you can find out everything you need to on the internet, really, right? So, like, how do I track my Facebook activity? So you could like learn then that, okay, I need to put a Facebook pixel on my website, and then I can monitor what happens as a result of my ads. So you can find out lots of stuff by Googling it, as we all know. And then, yes, another sort of golden rule of social is, we see on the next slide, there's loads of different things that you can use to target your advertising. So you can use demographics, you can use their interests, you know, people that are interested in like premium skincare brands, people that like spas and natural products, people that visited your website already, people who followed your page. There's so many options. You could overlay all these things. You could end up down to like 1,000 people, and the cost to advertise to 1,000 people would be ridiculous. You want to keep it like sufficiently broad that you benefit from the fact that this is an auction, and the larger you make your potential pool, the cheaper it will be for you to advertise to those people. So it's about relevance, but also giving these algorithms a bit of space and wiggle room as well. So what is the most important thing? It's creative. So creative is king or queen. It's all about creative. And I don't think any of us will be surprised, right? So we spend a lot of time on social media, we're scrolling, and what makes us stop? It's eye-catching creative. It's like, it's an amusing GIF, it's a video, it's, I don't know, it's bright colors, like, we're simple in some ways, aren't we? You know, it's things that are eye-catching. And you know, this is just showing you that of all the elements that sort of go into advertising, like creative is, you know, responsible for 47 very specific % of the overall impact of those the advertising. So really taking the time to test lots of different types of creative is so important. And here's some like key sort of stats, and as we said, we're going to share these slides, not stats, but tips rather. I will kind of maybe like summarize some of what I would consider creative best practice now. So this one actually isn't on there, but when you look at, say we're on Instagram, you'll notice that there are different formats. So you'll have like a square image, and then if you're in stories, you have vertical. So make sure that when you are creating ads on these platforms, you have different types of sizes of image assets so that your creative looks brilliant in whichever spot it finds itself in. Super important. Also really be aware that people are looking at this on their mobile phones, right? So we want to be thinking mobile first. They often might be looking at that when they're on the tube, or they're on the bus, or they're like also watching TV, so they don't have sound on. So let's be aware as well, we want to design for sound off. So maybe you need subtitles on a video if it's like an influencer talking about an experience they've had at your spa, for example. Using subtitles can be really important. Think about keeping copy concise. So, you know, it's really tempting in social media to like write reams and reams because we know so much about our products and about our experiences. But with paid social advertising, you only see the first 3 lines. I think we'll probably all be familiar with that. And you have to press like see more if you want to read the whole thing. So it's about getting the most important information like early on and trying to be a bit more single-minded in what we're saying in each post and in each ad that we do. And yeah, keep testing. Love this little guy, so cute. But yeah, always test more than one ad. Like, it's highly likely the first thing you test, like, well, one, you won't know whether it's good or bad because it's the first thing you're testing. But yeah, you need something to compare it against, and it might not work first time. You know, Jazz and I have been working together like on Instagram for Face for like quite a long time, and it's so interesting to see the different performance you get from like a video ad versus an image ad or a carousel format. You know, like a more influencer style versus more product style image. So yes, test lots of different things. And there are different perhaps approaches that you could take to your messaging as well. So, you know, you can think about more of like a problem solution based thing. So like, you know, my eyes are sore from screen time, this is the perfect heated eye one to like soothe your tired eyes. You might think of more of an influencer or product demo style advert, or maybe an offer-led one for, you know, when it's like that really key time when you're doing a big promotion. So there's obviously loads more than this, but like not only are there different formats, there's also different messages that you can talk about as well. So another one that I think is really important and, you know, is key for organic social as well is really establishing your tone of voice. And you can think about that, like there's some really great exercises if you go online, like, you know, I want to create my brand guidelines, or how do I define my tone of voice? Some wonderful exercises you can do, you know, little wheels where you think about, okay, are we more young and vibrant, or are we more like wise and authoritative? You know, these sort of like sliders of what you can think about how you encapsulate your brand. And just like, you know, there's some really nice examples obviously in the industry already. You've got, you know, Beauty Pie being like a disruptor and being, you know, yeah, I would say very disruptive in like their language and wanting to appear different and standing out from the crowd and the rest of the industry. This is an image from Fenty Beauty, which is like, whoa, that's like super bold, super confident. This attitude, it's like something your friend might say to you, you know, like it's just, yeah, it's all about them, and it's what you would expect from that brand. So it doesn't have to be as extreme as that, but it's about finding how your brand sounds and then being consistent in that so people know what to expect across different channels, across your website, and everywhere. So that was like a little whistle stop, some ideas around social media. I'm going to talk a little bit more about search now, which is another really, really important part of paid advertising. So just so like we're all on the same page with some things I'll go through. So, you know, we'll all have seen like Google shopping ads before. Here I was searching for Peak Club, and you know, you see the images of like appear at the top. We all bought stuff from this sort of format before. And then these are like text ads, so text search ads. So this is BABTAC's like branded search ad here that appears as well. So what is search all about? It's about being easy to find, which for like every business is like absolutely key now, right? And I think there's 2 tests that you could do as when you leave here today or on your phone right now, but please listen to me. No. So, you know, start by Googling your brand. Like, put your brand name in. Do you appear top of the list? If you don't, then Google branded search is something you should be looking into. You want your brand to be the first thing that people find. And whether you're first or not is dependent on your search engine optimization and like the authority of your website that Google sort of determines. So Google literally scrapes every website and looks at it for how reputable it is, how many people are visiting that website, what keywords are on it, all these different things. If your brand name is really unique, you might appear at the top quite easily. If you have a brand name that is a bit more common in terms of the words that it uses, it might be quite difficult to be in the top spot and to be easily found. So that's when Google branded search can come in. It's like the shortcut to great SEO is pay-per-click advertising in Google. Next little test I would suggest is Googling relevant keywords. So for BABTAC, that's like beauty therapist insurance. And then look, okay, well, where do I appear when I type in those sorts of words? Am I in the top sort of first couple of search results? Am I on the first page? If you're not on the first page, you're never, ever going to be found. So that's when Google non-branded search comes into play. And I'm going to talk a bit about what both of those things look like now and how you might use them. So this is, we're talking about branded search. This is a text-based ad, which appears when someone searches for your brand. So here, they're searching for BABTAC. And there are lots of different elements to it. So you've got like the URL, the phone number. On mobile, they can click that and it'll pull them straight through. Headlines, so when you set up a search ad, you can add up to 15 different headlines. And the best thing to do, like Google is just one big algorithm. So you want to give it more options so it can try lots of different combinations. So add in 15 different headlines that could work for your brand and allow it to chop and change them to find the best sort of combination for whoever searched for you. Then your descriptions is in sort of light grey bit. You can add up to 4 of those, and again, we'll splice them into place too. And then you've got site link extensions below that take people to really useful parts of your website. Like when you're setting it up, it's good, for example, you don't have to use site link extensions, but it's really good to do that because you take up more space. It looks more clickable, like you're more likely to get someone to visit your website the more you kind of populate what is possible. That's a branded search ad. And it's highly likely, it's a really good place to start because it's not expensive to do. So, unless your brand obviously is getting like absolutely hundreds of thousands of searches all the time, probably don't actually need branded search so much then. But if you're starting out like a couple of pounds a day, it'll probably be more than sufficient to run branded search, but it just means that you're not losing traffic by, perhaps a competitor who might bid on your keyword, or just that your brand name isn't quite, making it to the top of the list yet. So it's a really good place to start. What about non-branded search? So you build it in exactly the same way. It looks like the same sort of ad, but the difference is that you bid, rather than bidding on BABTAC and like words like BABTAC, you bid on phrases that are related to your product. So for example, that's like beauty association, beauty insurance, nail technician insurance, those types of things. And you set those as phrase match. And these are, you make a keyword list of how do I think people would get to my website? Why would they visit there? What would the most relevant terms be? And then that's how you build your keyword list. And again, you create a search ad which responds to that query. So yeah, again, great for you if you find that, okay, we're not really being found on the first page. So non-branded search is again a great place to look at. And you get really great insights around when your ad appears, so you can see, oh gosh, I'm appearing for some quite irrelevant search traffic. I can stop using those keywords, and it allows you to sort of hone things over time as well. And then, so Google Shopping is an entirely different thing, really. So it's not about keywords at all. It's all about your product feed. So I know a lot of people in the room have salons, so perhaps a bit less relevant. If you do have products, like Face, for example, it uses a product feed, and many e-commerce platforms will have an inbuilt integration. So for example, if you're on Shopify or WooCommerce, one of those, you'll be able to kind of switch on an integration between them and use Google Merchant Center in between to allow you to appear. And it's brilliant if it's a live feed, because if you have a promotion on your website, it will update that, for example, on Google Shopping, or if you add new products, they'll also then start to appear in things. So it's about the shopping feed, and that means that all the information on your website gets used in terms of deciding what product appears when. So if you have wonderful product descriptions on your website, that's really going to help you here. So, you know, talking about the brilliant ingredients that you use in your products, talking about you know, having reviews there, talking about how it's used, like all of these things. And when we think about, you know, when we were talking about non-brand search and these keywords, those are the words you want all over those product pages so that your brand can appear shopping. Yeah. So yeah, drawing towards the close, like you can have the best advertising in the world, but if your website doesn't convert, it's kind of all a waste of time and money, sadly. So the website is so important, and there's like a million brilliant guides online to help you to think about how you can improve your website, how it can be a better converting website. Some sorts of things you might start with is like, you know, run some website speed tests, like that are easy to find online as well, and see how you rank. If your page loads really, really slowly, people just aren't going to wait around. They'll just like, you know, they'll go back and they won't stick around. So look into that, and then you might have to talk to a developer, you know, whoever built your website about, okay, how do we speed this up? At least you know what the problem is. Ease of navigation is so key. So, I mean, you can see this is Face, Jasmine's wonderful brand. Like, this is what it looks like on mobile, and it's really easy to navigate. So it's really clear where the menu is. You can see where your basket is. It's easy to get back to the home page anytime, so you can click the Face logo. Simple. Trust points are so key. Photography, and then ease the checkout process. Go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is Jasmine's homepage. There are so many great things about this. So really lovely photography is like just a nice starting point. Like it feels like, such a great premium experience already. We've got awesome proof points here of like where Face has been featured. Like automatically you start to trust the brand more. Got a really great incentive to sign up. So even if I don't, you know, check out in this first visit, I might still sign up. So now I'm receiving her newsletter, and there's an opportunity for Jasmine to convert, you know, me into a customer at a later date. A really good thing to do is like a squint test. So on your homepage squint, the thing that you should see the most is the main call to action you want that person to take. So if I squint at this, I'm like, there's a really like black rectangle. Oh, that's the shop now button, right? So that's what we want people to do. So yeah, I think this is a really nice example of like really clean but effective website. And data is your friend. So Google Analytics is the sort of tracking machine in the background that allows you to see what's happening on my website, like how many visitors am I getting, how many pages do they look at, all those different things. So have Google Analytics there and make sure it's tracking all your key events. Depending on your sector and industry, conversion rate will be different, but say you're an e-commerce website, like 2 to 4% conversion is a good benchmark, but look up your industry. I'll talk about these last two because they're, I think, the most interesting bit. So conversion rate, how can we improve the conversion rate on a website? So it's by having things like really clear product descriptions, great photography, having reviews on product pages, so when someone's like, well, should I add to basket? There's someone beneath saying like this was the best, you know, face cream they ever bought in their entire life, right? PR features, and having a really straightforward checkout process. So there's nothing more annoying than when it's like, how do I work this? Where do I put the card details? You don't want that. And then there's some tips around average order value as well. Probably the best one is like, say your average order value is £40, you know, like a £45 free delivery threshold would encourage people to spend just over 10% more, right? So there's like these little tactics you can use to try and encourage people to spend that little bit more on your website. And finally, down to 1 minute, 15 seconds. Test and learn is the most important thing. Like, it's so hard to get it right first time. I think, you know, as we spoke about PR, like it does take time and iteration and seeing what works, and it's the same with social media. So, you know, do each test you should run for at least 2 weeks at a time, if not longer, but 2 weeks is the least. In terms of minimum budget, I would say like £1,000 per month per channel is again like the least I would use for a robust test. If you want it to be statistically significant, and if you said, you know what's working, what isn't. As I said earlier, keep your audiences like 1 million plus people and relatively large. And then there's so much to test. So, you know, audiences, you can look at demographics versus interest-based audiences. In terms of ad format, you can test image versus carousel or video. And messaging, you know, we talked about lots of different options there as well. So kind of like the world's your oyster a little bit. There's so much you can do. I think that's everything.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah. So it's so interesting to listen to because it's something that we don't know as much about as a lot of things. So it's great to have all that knowledge and you explain it so clearly as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.